I use, because I work with a lot of kids, I use some stuff that they use. And so there is a computer animated voice that may not necessarily be as audible as we would like, but the kids get into that stuff, you know. So, but there are subtitles, and so I want you to kind of read the subtitles, listen to the lyrics, and you should be able to get some of the important information. Has anyone ever heard of the musical artist, I guess he calls himself, T-Pain? Anyone ever heard that? He's like, yeah.
I'm on a boat.
What's that?
I'm on a boat.
You're on a boat. Okay, cool. He has this song that some of you may not necessarily know, I'm in love with a stripper. That's a quote. That's his song. It's not what I am not in love with the stripper. But that's one of his songs. And so he uses this computer animated voice, and so if you can just try to listen through some of that stuff, I think you'll get some powerful stuff. And I think I'll turn off the lights just to make sure that that things are visible. So we will get started.
Let us rise up tonight with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on in these powerful days. These days of time to make America what it ought to be. We got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter what we know, because I've been to mountaintop and I've looked over, I see the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. Lord, about everything, I'm not feeling anything. My eyes have seen the glory of the 1960 students all over the South started sitting in at North Town. I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, taking the whole nation back to those great mountains of democracy, which were done made by the founding fathers, and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. We got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter what we know, because I've been to mountaintop and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. About everything, I'm not feeling anything. My eyes have seen the glory of the 1962, and it goes to Albany, Georgia. They started to straighten their backs up, and when the men and women straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere across the land. Can't run away, sit back and listen to me. 1963, black people get married in Alabama. Well, it's the conscience of this nation, brought into being the civil rights bill. Later that year, August, trying to tell America about a dream that I had. We got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter what we know, because I've been to mountaintop and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. We got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter what we know, because I've been to mountaintop and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
All right, can I have the lights, please? Thank you. So what were some of the themes that you, first of all, who was the speaker? Martin Luther King, right? And so what, I'm going to go back to that. So what were some of the themes that you heard, or what were some of the messages that he was delivering in that speech that you heard?
Be challenges.
What's that?
Challenges.
There will be challenges. All right. What else?
Hope.
Hope. Okay. What are some other themes that he talked about in the message?
Faith.
Faith. You talked about faith in the message. Okay. What else?
The promised land.
The promised land. He talked about the promised land. Why do you think that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King would talk about or use the promised land as a prominent part of this message?
Because he was a religious man.
Because he was a religious man, right? And so he's making some religious speeches. What speech do you think this excerpt came from?
I'm sure you're going to tell us.
Well, no, you're going to, because you already know. Okay, so most people say, I have a dream, which I think is very interesting because oftentimes I hear people who don't like diversity or complain about diversity and say, we always talk about this stuff. Why do we always talk about it? But they don't know anything about it. Like you ask someone a fact, and they don't know anything about it. But they're tired of stuff that they don't know, which I think is really interesting, that I'm tired of something that I don't know anything about, right? So Dr. Martin Luther King had a number of speeches, the most famous of which is the I Have a Dream speech. Now, what was what the kids call the beat or the hook of the song? What did the song keep going back to? We're going to get there, right? We're going to get where? To the promised land. He said, we're going to get there. He also says, now, this is one of the things that I find so remarkable about this speech. This is called the mountaintop speech, right? He was a religious man. One of the things that he says in the speech, and I just think it was absolutely prophetic, is that this is the speech he gives the night before he's assassinated the next morning. So he's giving this speech to an audience, and he says, I may not get there. I may not get there, but we will get to the promised land. So why does he use this promised land? Because he was a religious man. And what allegory or what metaphor is he trying to convey with this? I've been to the mountaintop. I'm not going to get there, but we will.
Moses.
So he's comparing himself to Moses, because Moses was one of those individuals who, in Judeo-Christian beliefs, took these people out of bondage, out of Egypt, and was taking them to where? The promised land, right? But one of the problems was that Moses could not take them to the promised land. And I know that there are some Lutherans in here, so you've gone to Sunday school, right? So in those Sunday school stories, did the Israelites say, oh man, we don't have Moses, let's not do this any longer. Let's stay lost in the wilderness. Did they make that decision? No. Right? So one of the things that's really crucial is that Moses takes the people of Israel out of the bondage of Egypt. They get to the promised land, and Moses says, I've done my job, I can't take you any further. And at that point, people send spies into the land. And there were two spies that went to survey the land. And it was Joshua and Caleb. And Joshua and Caleb went into the land flowing with milk and honey. And they said, yes, there are rivers of milk and honey. There are grapes the size of a man's hand. There are, riches, and it's just glorious over in the promised land. But there were also other spies. And the other spies went into the promised land and said, yeah, there are grapes the size of a man's hand, and it is flowing with milk and honey. But there are monsters, and there are giants in the land. And so with that information, they have these two pieces of information. What do you think that, who becomes their leader and takes them into the promised land?
Aaron.
It actually was Joshua and Caleb, right? The two fearless folks who saw the positive and did not succumb to the fear of the negative, right? And so what Dr. King is saying in this particular speech is that I may not make it, but we will make it. So the responsibility of getting into the promised land is now given to whom? It's given to whom? To the people. Right? It's given to the people. Will there be another Dr. Martin Luther King? No. Will there be another Gandhi? Will there be another Mother Teresa? No. Why? Because their genetic makeup was very particular to them. There will never be another Steve Jobs. There will never be another. There'll never be another. Even Bill Gates. These people will not come back again. So the responsibility of carrying on the civil rights movement is now given to whom? To the people, to us. All right? And so if we're going to create the kind of world where all of our daughters and all of our sons can live in a world without being persecuted, without being afraid to be who they are, without having to buy products to boost their self-esteem, we have to start taking control of the world that we live in. All right? Because it's our responsibility. Because if it's not us, who's it going to be? If you don't teach your children, who's going to teach your children? That's not rhetorical. If you don't put your family values in your kids, who's going to put their family values in your kids?
Peers.
Their peers, other people, TV, media. They will tell your kids how to be if you don't. Right? And so all too often, as people, we get downtrodden and we get beat down by these big systems that we really have control over. And so today I'm going to teach you how to start taking control over some of these systems and driving our own lives so that we can make them better for everyone. All right? So what I'd like for you to do is to open up your handout, and there's a section of yellow. And what I'd like for you to do is I want you to, there are markers on your table. What I'd like for you to do is to write down in each of those sections one thing that you value. All right? So one thing that you value. So 3 things that you value. One in each of those sections. And they can be, it could be a thing, like a cabin or a boat. It could be a person. Like your significant other or a niece or nephew. It could be a concept like love or freedom. So one thing that you value in each one of those boxes. So one thing that you value in each one of those boxes. Do I have enough markers on tables for folks? All right. As I look around the room, it looks like people have all 3. What I'd like to do is I'd like to play a game at this point. And the game is very simple. What I want you to do is I want you to find 3 people who either agree with or have the same thing that you have on your paper. Once you've found those individuals, I want them to put their initials in that box. All right? There's only one other rule. I want you to find someone who is not at your table. All right? So I want you to find people who are not at your table. So, the rule is very simple. 3 people for each one of those things that you value. Have them put their signature on your piece of paper, and it can't be someone at your table. I'll give you about 4 minutes.